hope this works. 3 times the charm. Kind of screwed up the first 2 times. So, thank you for watching me on this Facebook Live, this impromptu Facebook Live. There's been so much going on in my life right now that I want to make it a point that as I'm going through this 200 episode podcast journey, that anytime inspiration or motivation or spiritualization pops into my existence, I want to take advantage of putting content out there. If you're following the show, and I know this is posting on my personal page, that, hey, Margo, I'll get into you guys, which was the kind of the catalyst of me deciding to go live tonight. I know it's Saturday night. My dog is freaking out. He's actually back here behind. It's weird because there's a lot of fireworks. There's an Italian festival, one of the, I think, the longest Italian festival in U.S. history, happens in my town, and a lot of people shoot impromptu fireworks. And I don't know what happened to my dog, because he's a rescue dog. Whatever happened to him prior to us getting him, that he kind of loses his shit. So he acts all erratic. He tries to get under the bed, which is weird because we don't really have a bed that he can get under. I think the last time he did it was on July 4th. He went under the bed and my wife had to pull him out. But what I want to do is, this video is going to be on my personal page. I'll share this on my podcast page, the Dependent Independent podcast page, but I'm also going to post a link on YouTube of this video on Patreon, because I want my Patreon subscribers to do that. Now, if I can kind of do some little housekeeping, a few weeks ago, I decided to kind of start this little, or months ago, start this little side hustle to help folks learn about podcasting and making podcasting easier. And I realized I'm a terrible salesman, because I'm not good at it. I never was good at it. I'm good at building relationships and trying to find a way to help people. And if that leads to me possibly working with people that are willing to pay me for my services, that's exactly what my end game is. But I tried this thing. I tried it, right? I tried to go and share something and do what other people do, and I failed. I think I failed miserably because it didn't quite hit the mark. I didn't like where it took me. So I'm not going to be doing any tips and trick videos in the short term. And thank you, Liz. I know you can, but I guess my heart has to be into it in order to be able to do it. So we are doing this on Ecamm Live, which is, I got folks commenting on this. I can see them. I'm not going to post them on this because I want to make sure that I just want to get this on YouTube. But I'm seeing you and I'm hearing you, and I understand the comments that you're giving to me, which is great. So thank you very much. But in doing that, I'm going through this process. The last week, I've done and I did a Facebook Live on this earlier this week, or this weekend, that I just finished kind of tackling this big project at work. And we did this exercise on teaching a group of employees at my company, myself and other leaders in the organization, about what it means to own something, what it means to hold each other accountable, and what it means to drive something. Now, I know those are kind of corporate terms and business terms, but the amazing thing, it kind of touches everything we do in our lives anyway, right? When you think about what we own, and I kind of use this as, at least this is what I taught my fellow employees, that when you own something, when things go well in what you own and things are moving in the right direction, you feel a little bit of pleasure, right? You feel fulfillment. I mean, that's just when your job is going well and you own your job, you feel pretty good about it. You go home, you get excited, you tell your family about it, you brag about it, you boast about it with your friends. But when you own a job and you notice that things don't go the way that they're supposed to, you have a level of pain, right? When you own something, like when I rent an apartment, and I mean, I remember as a kid, I rented an apartment with, I didn't rent one. My father rented an apartment. My father, it's weird that being a doctor, he never owned his own home. Like I guess he owned a home when he was married to my mother before she passed away. I guess we own that home. I'm not quite sure. You'd have to ask him. And when you own an apartment or you rent an apartment, it's something breaks, you just call the maintenance guy to fix it. There's no really investment in it. So you don't really feel a lot, maybe a little bit discomfort, but not a lot of pain. Someone else comes over and fixes it. But as I've owned several houses, I'm Daddy Warbucks. As I've built my homeowning career, when you own a house and something happens and something goes wrong, it really pisses you off. There's a lot of pain. But when things go right, you feel satisfied. You feel happy that your lawn is green, or you feel happy that all the plumbing works and the AC works and all that stuff. And as I'm kind of going through this process, it's kind of gotten me to think about this thing, like this 200 episode podcast, about how, when I started this, I just recently I've talked to a lot of people, and we have a lot of folks scheduled to be on the show. Other podcasters like Neil Giarte is going to be on the show. He does a podcast called All About Post, which is great, and I hope I'm saying that right. I actually created a documentary about podcasting on iTunes, and you can check it out, called The Messenger. It's a podcast documentary. It's awesome. It's been a while since I've seen him in person, 2 years ago, but he is going to be on my show, and hopefully I can see him at the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference, which I'm speaking to in September, which is going to be fun. There is a level of ownership in this, as people have asked me, why are you doing this? Like tell me what the 200 episode podcast is about, or episode journey. And the fact that I share it with people is the immediate time that I own it, right? I tell people, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. This is what I want, how I want it to end. And I know we're starting to do podcasts that happen every week now. I know I used to do mini-sodes and full episodes that post every Thursday at 9 a.m., but now that I'm inspired, and I'm really making an effort because I own it, and I want to get out there, and I want to drive. And remember, I was talking about what I talked about earlier in the week with this group of employees. It's driving, owning, and holding each other accountable. I share these goals with you because I want you to hold me accountable. I want that. I want people to ask, like, when's the next show? And it's great when fans reach out and they say, I haven't heard a show, or I really like this show. It's an amazing feeling. But in spite of all that, this whole journey, 200 episode journey, is really about building relationships. That I was interviewed on a podcast called Podcast Junkies by a podcast colleague, Harry Duran, and the cool part about it is, as I listen to this interview, and every time I'm a guest on a show, I always share things differently than I share things on my own show. And I think he kind of tagged the meaning of the podcast, or why I started doing this, as, "Hey, Luck, you okay, buddy?" All right, my dog's back in here. He seems to be acting normal. That it's to make friends in my town. Now, I don't know if it was about really making friends in my town. It was probably really about making just friends. I mean, I was in this cocoon of rules that I couldn't build relationships with people. And since I launched that first episode, and I started learning about social media like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, it's allowed me to meet people that there is absolutely no way I ever would have met these people without doing the show. There's absolutely no way. It never would have happened. So technically, this show, and I've said this a few times, has kind of changed my life. It's really changed the way I look at the world and how the world looks at me. And it's a blessing. It's an absolute blessing. Like, it's created a level of, I talked about because I own this journey, a level of fulfillment that I've never had before. Like, I've never felt this way. And it's amazing. And if I could pass that off, and especially I talked about it in my Facebook Live earlier in the week, or in the weekend, that you have to figure out a way to be fulfilled and find a way to find happiness. If you don't, you just end up losing time. Like, the clock ticks, and you can't maximize on it. I said earlier on my Facebook Live, I keep referring to that because it was kind of the preface to this Facebook Live, that I don't want to end this journey, not only 200 episodes, but the whole thing about life, end it and looking back and saying, well, I had a lot more losses than I had wins. I had a lot more times where I felt pain than I felt fulfillment and satisfaction. And the one thing that I really wanted to kind of focus on in this Facebook Live is really about let me stop this. I really wanted to talk about a relationship that I've built in this, and this is kind of a symbolic. This symbolizes really the relationships that I've built through this entire process. You know, when I put my first show out and I shared things and I told stories, people started connecting with me through Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I started really reaching out to these people because I'm not about. I have a lot of podcast fans, and people pay attention to the show. And what makes it really worthwhile is when I actually connect with these people on a personal level. I want to make sure that they know that is important to me. And the relationships I've built in this process are lifelong relationships. But here's the thing. And I mentioned all that stuff before about accountability, ownership, and driving something. Like making something happen, taking action to make something happen. Before, I was this lazy asshole. Like, really, this guy that thought that, you know, friends will come and go, and I don't really have to work really hard, and I got really comfortable kind of pushing people away. That was my deal. I felt bad that, hey, what's up, Larry? Larry, the godfather of the podcast, Larry Herrera. Schmo the Intern on the Idiots podcast. You should check him out on iTunes. It's a pretty crazy show. I've had an excellent opportunity numerous times to be on that show, so you definitely should check them out. So I almost lost my train of thought, but I think I'm going to bring myself back. So in doing this process, I was this asshole before, and I didn't like myself. And I guess you need to find yourself before you can let people in. So once I found myself, I started letting people in. And I started connecting with some amazing people. Some people that had really cool, interesting ways of expressing themselves. They had, and I'm using expression as far as podcasting goes, that this is kind of an interesting community, right? Like right now, people are liking this video and sharing this video, and they are fellow podcasters, right? These are people that take the time to do exactly what I'm doing now at, I don't even know what time it is. What is it, 10:15, to go on Facebook and stream and share and talk and you know, this podcast is not scripted. It's directly from here. It's awesome. It's amazing. If you listen to my last show, it's definitely, you know, what the show's about. We don't rehearse it. That's what's so great about it. And there's no outlines. It's a great conversation, and we see what happens and what stories and experiences we can share that can help us continue to move forward. But once I put my first show out there and I decided to share how I felt, other people started sharing how they felt with me, which was weird and extremely uncomfortable when it started. But I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice to let people in and allow people to shape my point of view and allow people to help me feel differently. And two of the people that I connected with, and I hope they're still on the feed, is there's a podcast I stumbled across. I don't know if it was because I followed a friend of mine named Dana Buckler who does the How Is This Movie podcast, but there were two ladies who have graced me on the show, on my show. I think they've been on my show twice, where we've actually talked about relationships, and we talked about the women's movement. They went to the parade after Trump was elected with the pussy hats, and they did all that stuff, pardon my French. And they shared those experiences. And recently, probably a few months ago, I started reconnecting with, and it's interesting, you know, when you meet people, things kind of organically change. And the podcast I'm referring to is Book versus Movie. Now, Book versus Movie, I've talked about it. It's been a Are You Listening? I Think You Should podcast, which I think, let me see if I could do that. Oh, it's right there. That they read a book. And they watch the movie that the book is based on. Hey, Margo, and actually the two hosts of the show are Margo and Margo Donahue and Margo Porras, and you know you get connected with people, but I think if I'm owning this journey, I'm making an absolute effort. I need to make an effort to build relationships with people, which was very hard for me to do. I'm going to take a sip. Sorry, I'm talking a lot and I need to drink something. I used to be very lazy in holding on to relationships. You know, when you're younger and you get to know people, it's usually through school or a job. And I didn't make any effort to try to continue relationships that happened a long time ago, and also relationships that were budding. I didn't strike while the iron's hot. And this whole exercise, this 200 episode podcast, has forced me, or created a control that empowers me to build relationships. And I connected with Margo and Margo. I started listening to their show, and I liked it. They read a lot of they do podcasts on a lot of books that I'm not familiar with, or movies that I might not have watched, but the ones that I have, I either learn more about the book, or they reposted a podcast on the Jurassic Park, the first movie that came out in 1993, and the book by Michael Crichton. And the irony is, and I know that Margo Porras thinks that book sucks. I actually thought that's the first novel I ever read, and I actually read that twice in one day. And that's the first time I discovered. I know we had like school books, when you were in school, had summer reading, and I was also the guy that actually did book reports on books that were based on movies, based on the motion picture. I cannot believe that I got through high school and grade school or middle school, the fact that I actually did that. I mean, I remember doing a book report on the movie, I can't believe it, the movie Predator, like the actual book. And I traced a picture of the Predator alien on the cover and actually submitted that for a grade, and my teachers accepted it. So Jurassic Park and Michael Crichton and all his work, I've read all his books. I have still some, just for posterity, rebought some of his books at a yard sale that someone was selling, just to have them, because they're awesome. And he writes in a very no, I think it's a good book, Margo, and I absolutely disagree. I think the book is awesome. The absolute book is awesome. So, here, you know what? I'm not gonna. I'm trying to. I want to make. I don't want to take too much time trying to post all these things. But Margo Porras is telling me that it's not a good book, but I think it absolutely is, because I'm a nerd and it's all science, and they get into the Ian Malcolm, the Jeff Goldblum character is awesome. He's so great in the movie. But anyway, I digress. So I started listening to Margo and Margo's podcasts, and then because of this exercise, I reached out and I started talking with them, and I connected, and we were on a show, and we did my show because we talked about relationships. Margo and Margo actually live on opposite sides of the country. So Margo lives on the East Coast, and the other Margo lives on the West Coast, and they have similar connections in what they do for a living, and they became friends, and now actually do their shows on opposite sides of the country, which is very cool. And as we went through the process, I started working with Margo D and helping her out in getting her the technical aspect of her show. Remember, I was doing this whole side project on making podcasting easier, and it started with kind of doing little side projects for someone like Margo D. And now her show sounds great, and it was great to have an opportunity to work with her, and we would do Facebook Lives. I was really kind of disengaged in my old job, so I had not Facebook Lives, but more like Skype calls where we kind of walk through the equipment that she had. And today, kind of fast forward, and I'll kind of fill in the blanks, but kind of fast forward today, I got a little thank you note from Margo D, and I got stickers and decals of Book versus Movie. Let me see. You see that? Like Book versus Movie. Check it out on iTunes and everywhere you can find this show, and listen to it. It's awesome. They're great because they are natural, and they are real, and they speak from the heart, and they talk about what they know and don't pretend to talk about what they don't know, and they do their research. And they really talk about how a book, when you watch a movie and and you read the book that it's based on, did it work and did it not work? And I think they don't come off as these smarty pants. There's a lot of people out there that do that, and I'm so happy to be a part of what they did. Now, in the grand scheme of things, again, I'm a podcaster and they're podcasters, and we connected, but what I really enjoy, and the weird thing is I know I got Margo P commenting on this video. I spent a lot more time talking to Margo D and really understanding Margo D she and I both have dealt with things in our lives, and we both talk to each other. I know she's on the East Coast, and I plan on visiting her, which I need to make a conscious effort. And when I go back to that whole idea of ownership, if I'm going to own these relationships, I need to do what I need to do to maintain them, to make them mean something. There's a lot of shit that we do on social media, and I mean, I remember, actually, social media has kind of screwed us because we don't write letters anymore. We don't really take the time to really craft our meaning of what we're trying to say. I don't think we really do a good job at having real conversations with people. And I'm anxious to talk about how to have authentic conversations at my presentation at MapCon this year. And if you're a podcaster listening to this, Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference, I know Joe Pardo was on here too. He's the facilitator of the whole thing. Definitely go online and check it out and sign up. You hear me speak. It's going to be awesome. I love it. It's and I hope some of the podcasters that are on this feed actually join us. And I have something really exciting to present really about having an authentic conversation. But the whole, it can be superficial. It can be very surface related when you're trying to use social media to talk to people, but you got to pick up the phone, man. You gotta just reach out to people and talk and grow. Like I'm tired of I saying that yeah, we're friends, but I can't really speak to it. And the only way you can do that is accelerate experiences and try to find ways to help each other when things are shitty and things are tough. And I've spent a lot of time recently working and talking and speaking to Margo, specifically Margo D. And if I could share something personal is I don't use the word love loosely. I think that word is something that I guess back in high school, I never liked the fact that these popular bitch girls would always sign notes and be like, love you. And I hear them say that, and it didn't mean anything. And I made a commitment back when I was a kid. Like, if I'm going to use this, I want to make sure that it is, it's one sacred word. And I was having a conversation, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing that that kind of sticks in, like it sticks in my head that Margo D, I was talking to her over the week. She needed some help with something, and I was this whole week that I was actually doing some work in Pennsylvania, so I had a 2.5 hour commute back and forth all 5 days. And just before I closed the call, I said, hey, I love you, and I hope you take care, and I hope you're doing well. And she said, I love you, and she hung up the phone, and I kind of was like, that meant something. Like, I meant to say that, and I hope she meant to say it back to me, because I'm building this long distance relationship with someone based on the show that means something. It's a part in my life, and I see people commenting on the show. I got Margo P, I got Liz, I got Larry, I got all these people that I've known for some time, and when I say that, I mean that. I love you guys. You're important to this whole experience of mine, and this will end, and the 200 podcasts will be over, and whether I write a book on it or I decide to listen back to them, it's going to be one step in this long creative process of my life, and the fact that I'm able to tap into the artist that I used to be, but know that what's going to be important and what's going to be really valuable to me that I'm going to hold on to. Remember, I talked about before about looking back on my life and knowing that I'm fulfilled versus pain or loss, or I'd rather look back knowing that I made a bigger impact with everybody rather than not being able to do anything. So my message here is that if you make an impact and you make an effort to build something with someone, that eventually it comes back where you get a bunch of decals in the mail and a thank you note that actually means something from someone you care about. And even though they might not be in the next room or in the house down the street, you've made a bigger effort just simply taking the superficial route of saying hello, but to calling them on the phone and asking them how they're doing and and understand that life is way too short to waste on not trying your best to build relationships and owning the journey that you decide to take. Now, I don't know I don't know, this is a Facebook Live. I'm doing it almost 10:30 on a Saturday in July 2018. Who knows what it'll look like in 2019 or 20, but I'm going to let the Margos know that I really appreciate these. These mean more than just simple decals. These are something that I'm going to hang up in my house, and I know exactly where I'm going to put them. And I don't know if I do a good enough job to know that with all this effort actually means something, or that it's a win when I'm able to do this. And I love you guys, and I mean that. And I love the folks that are contributing to this feed. You got to share what's in here in order to be able to move forward. And that's what I talk about on my show all the time. And I hope that as I continue to do this, and I continue to do podcasts on no matter what the topic is that's relevant in the time that my co-host is on, and I'm so anxious to see how the remaining co-hosts of the summer, because this is I'm gonna be doing shows every week, mean to me, and what it leads to, and what relationships it means to. And there are some that are gonna kind of fizzle away, but there's folks that have been with me since the beginning that I need, and I know, and I might not do it, guys. I might not do a good enough job really driving those relationships, but I will do a better job because it's so important to me that we do that. And thank you, Margo. Margo just put this on here. Let me see if I can. There you go. You guys are the best. Like you represent some of the greatest things that have happened through this 200 episode podcast. And again, I'm just a guy who turns on a camera and records my voice and goes on a website and puts it up there, and so people can download it. But it's way more important than that. It's way bigger than that. It's like anything. It's like any artist that decides to take a paintbrush and put it on a canvas. You know, at the time they might be thinking I'm just blowing off steam, painting something, but who would think that eventually that would be in a gallery that someone would pay an enormous amount of money for, or a young artist would go in there and be totally inspired to actually take whatever technique they see on that and then try to work on their own. And that's what this whole journey is about. That's what this is about. Thank you, Margo, for I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry Margo D isn't here, but I hope this message gets to her that I've enjoyed our conversations the last few weeks, and I hope I've helped her get through some of the tough things she's been dealing with now. But these stickers here mean way more than just a thank you note, and I'm very, very excited to be able to post these, or actually hang these up, and she's given me enough of them that I could get them around on my equipment. Guys, I want to thank you for joining me on this Facebook Live. Please feel free to share this. That's the cool thing about these videos. When you watch them, you can actually share them. If you're on this, you know who I am. If not, someone shared it. Check the Dependent Independent podcast. You can download, listen to the show. It posts every week. And for those of you that have followed me all this time, that want to take part in this new venture of mine, I have this Patreon page, patreon.com/thedependentindependent, where you can actually go on for $1 a month. That's all it is. It's not even that much money. I'm going to post different, and again, when I started the show, I talked about how I really want to take advantage about how often I'm inspired to actually post content, something different, like this behind-the-scenes stuff. I know we do podcasting, and thanks, Margo, and I know that you guys mean a lot, especially the folks that actually, are patrons of the show. I want to give you specific content, behind-the-scenes stuff, early access. Actually, all the podcasts that I do, I post 3 or 4 days before, so you can get early access to that. So you can check that out on patreon.com. So if you're a supporter of the show and you're on, or you're just a supporter of me, I got a lot of family on my Facebook page, and it's not going to kill you to go on and donate $1 a month, where you could do that, and you can get this content, which gets the buzz going, which is very, very cool. So do that. So we're going to keep this on Facebook Live. We're going to keep this on my personal page. We'll share it on the podcast page, the Dependent Independent podcast page, but I'll get this video as soon as I'm done. I'm going to edit it, put a little title on it, a little graphics, and we'll get it on our YouTube page, and we'll put it on Patreon so those folks can see it there as well. Thanks for joining me, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm going to finish this beer because, man, I've been talking a lot, and I really need a drink. It's 10:30. I did it less than a half hour. And you guys rock, and thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to my show. Thank you for just being a part of this and even taking some time late on this Saturday night or Sunday morning or Monday morning or Monday night, whenever it is, to check me out, okay? Thanks, guys, and I will see you guys later.